has been vindicated by someone of the stature of Judge Breck.
A Michigan judge drops first-degree murder charges against Dr. Death, the inventor of the suicide machine. And good morning, America. I'm Joan London.
And I'm Charles Gibson. It's Wednesday, July 22nd. Good to have you with us this morning. Hope you can stay with us for a time.
And as we saw by that tape, as we see Jack Kevorkian, the so-called suicide doctor, is still making headlines. This is the second time that murder charges have been dropped against him for assisting in the deaths of chronically ill people. But of course, it isn't the end of the controversy. In this half hour, we will speak with him about his latest apparent victory and also about the highly charged issue of euthanasia.
Also ahead, we're going to have a little time with Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Al Gore and his wife Tipper. Steve Fox caught up with them last night on the last leg of the Clinton-Gore Great American Bus Tour, as we call it. I'm not sure they do. And Money editor Tyler Matheson takes a look at how business may be affected by Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a new law that some are calling the most far-reaching legislation since the Civil Rights Act of the 1960s. And in the weather, Dr. Christian, as usual, has the prescription.
Well, thank you very much, Charlie. For all you ailing patients out there, residents of the northern half of the country will be paying a price for the refreshingly cool air and sunny skies that moved in earlier this week. Rain, sometimes heavy, developing in the northwestern and north central states, will spread eastward over the next few days.
We go first to the news. Leading the news, the Republican campaign for presidency, and talk about a new job for one of the president's most loyal soldiers. Mike Schneider with that story on the news of the day. Mike?
Thank you, Charlie. Good morning, everybody. James Baker is still on the road this morning, still searching for peace in the Middle East, but there is a new report out this morning which essentially backs up what we told you on Monday, that he's about to step aside as Secretary of State and hit the campaign trail to help President Bush win re-election. For more on this right now, we're going to go live to the White House and ABC's Ann Compton. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Mike. If and when Jim Baker comes here to the White House next month to assume the role of basically the greatest among equals on the president's staff, his assignment would be to sharpen and focus the Bush administration's economic message. Economics has the White House far more worried than the poll numbers. President Bush found that out yesterday as he campaigned through Pennsylvania. Middle-income families told President Bush how much they need economic help, including his proposal for $1,000 tuition grants for private and public schools. One was a mother with 8 children, one an 8th grader on scholarship, finally an unemployed father on disability. President Bush urged each one to have patience, that better economic times are coming.
I am not pessimistic about the economic future. We've been through this long, slow recession. We're growing a little bit now as a country. In my view, we are poised for a good recovery.
But there was a darker assessment being delivered in Washington. Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, who generally agrees with Bush administration policy, warned in congressional testimony that the recovery is only modest, even subnormal, and it will leave the country with a lingering pain over joblessness. The whole Bush strategy was based on the presumption that by this time in the campaign, Americans would be feeling better economically. Jim Baker might return to the White House with a legend of somewhat the Midas touch politically, but it's doubtful he personally could turn around the economy single-handedly. Mike?
And what can he do? I mean, why is Mr. Baker considered to be such an asset, so important to the president?
Well, there's no one in the world who is closer to George Bush. It dates back not just the 15 or 16 years in which Secretary Baker has been involved in presidential campaigns back in the Ford campaign, but maybe 30 years when back in Houston, young George Bush asked his young friend Jim Baker to come into the Republican Party and help with a congressional race. The two are very close, and I'm told Jim Baker's the only one who can turn around and tell the president, no, that's a stupid decision. Do it another way.
And thanks very much. ABC's Ann Compton, live for us this morning from the White House. Now, the word from the Democratic camp on this Wednesday morning is meet me in St. Louis. That is where the end of the road occurred for the Bill Clinton-Al Gore bus tour, the one that started in New York City 6 days ago and 1,000 miles ago. Yesterday's itinerary included 4 states and just as many rallies. And once again, ABC's Ron Claiborne was along for the ride.
Bill Clinton brought his made-for-TV traveling roadshow to Vandalia, Illinois, once the state capital where Abraham Lincoln served as a state legislator.
Abraham Lincoln is turning over in his grave tonight to think of what George Bush and Dan Quayle have done to the Republican Party and the United States of America.
Vandalia is Republican territory, but the area is reeling from nearly 10 years of double-digit unemployment, making it fertile ground for Clinton's economic message.
Most people in this crowd tonight are here because you're working harder for less money than you were making 10 years ago. Am I right?
Earlier in the day, campaigning in southern Indiana, Clinton came out firing at President Bush for deriding his plans for cutting the deficit and raising taxes on the rich.
Mr. Bush said the other day Bill Clinton's plan is smoke and mirrors.
He said no.
Yeah, that's right. If ever there was an expert on smoke and mirrors, it's him.
Late last night, the buses reached St. Louis, their final destination, 1,000 miles and 5 days after Clinton and Al Gore left New York City.
By any measure, this bus trip has been a tremendous success for Clinton and Gore. They drew huge crowds everywhere. And even more important, they got the kind of saturation media coverage that politicians crave. Still, the election is nearly 4 months away. And in order to win, the Democrats are going to have to sustain this momentum in the face of what are likely to be powerful Republican counterattacks. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, St. Louis.
We go overseas to Iraq right now, where there has been a retreat and something of an escalation at the same time. It all involves those UN weapons inspectors. They've now pulled away from the spot outside Iraq's agriculture ministry, the place where they've been trying to move on inside and take a look at some documents for more than 2 weeks. They say they were getting afraid of all the Iraqi demonstrators and the possibility of violence. But at the UN itself, members of the Security Council are now talking about possibility of airstrikes against Iraq, unless Saddam Hussein starts to cooperate with the nuclear inspectors. Grief mixed with anger at a funeral in Palermo, Italy yesterday. Anger at the mafia and the government's failure to stop mafia violence. ABC's Mike Lee reports.
Emotions were running high among police who attended the funeral for 5 of their colleagues murdered while escorting one of Italy's top anti-mafia prosecutors. Italy's president and the prime minister were caught up in a near riot as angry police tried to force the national police chief out of the church. The officers accused their boss of failing to give them enough resources to battle organized crime. Their anger had boiled over in the wake of Sunday's car bomb attack. The main target, Paolo Borsellino, had helped to imprison many mafia leaders and was widely known to be a marked man.
Most of the people we talked with here in Palermo insist that the mafia can be defeated, but only if politicians stop relying upon organized crime for money and votes.
Many people complain that law enforcement officials have their hands tied by weak laws made in Rome.
The judges, the magistrates, they are on the first line, but there is no one that backs them up.
Some police bodyguards, fearing a repeat of this latest tragedy in their ranks, are threatening to withdraw their escort services for public officials. We are expected to fight a war, said one policeman, but we are not allowed to fight the mafia with its own brutal tactics. Mike Lee, ABC News, Palermo, Sicily.
And that is the news till now. It's time to check in with Charlie and Spencer.
Thanks very much, Michael. 8 minutes after the hour.